Thank you very much to all the speakers so far. Next, we welcome Professor Punya Mishra. He is the Director of Innovative Learning Futures at the Learning Engineering Institute and is a professor at Arizona State University. Professor Mishra will be taking us on a storytelling journey set in a range of challenging educational contexts around the world. Let us give him the floor as our storyteller. Over to you, Prof. Mishra.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. I hope you can see a slide on there and you can hear me clearly. Let's make sure the tech works because that is often the challenge here. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today and for the kind introduction. It's been a pleasure listening to all the other speakers so far. A special shout out to Hyun Park for representing the student body. I think that's always very impressive. And I also need to thank Barry Kruger for giving a shout out to Arizona State University, which is where I am right now. So to start off, this is a little bit about myself. Almost everything I do is public on my website, so you can go there and see things. What I'm going to do is something somewhat different than what I talk about as a researcher and a scholar. That's what I do. But today, I'm going to stick with sort of the key ideas behind the International Day for Digital Learning 2025, which is center the global digital learning dialogue, celebrate strategies and practices, and learn from digital learning realities and experiences. So I want to take us back a little bit in time to March of 2020. Many of us will remember that's when the COVID shutdown happened across the globe. One of the things that happened at that time was a few of us got together to start this webinar series called Silver Lining for Learning, and that's been going on now for 5 years. So my co-hosts include Chris Dede from Harvard, Kurt Baum from Indiana, Lydia Kao from Toronto, myself, and Young Zhao at the University of Kansas and University of Melbourne. And we thought, being naive that we would do a few episodes where we'd be sharing stories of the kinds of creative things people were doing in the advent of the pandemic, and that's what we would focus on. But here we go, 5 years later, 226 episodes. We're still going strong. We celebrated our 5th year anniversary this week. We have had 350 guests from across the world. And you can go to silverliningforlearning.org and be a part of that conversation. What I think is important to recognize is that this is a completely unfunded effort. This is us meeting every Saturday, inviting interesting people from across the world to engage in some genuine conversations driven by curiosity, passion, and a commitment to education and learning in all its forms. And it seemed very appropriate to sort of bring that up in the context of what we are discussing and talking about in this day. And we've covered a whole range of topics from student autonomy, remote learning. I could go on and on. The role of philanthropy, new systems of education, different ways of education assessment. Clearly, a bunch of episodes in the recent past have focused on AI, just given its sort of salience. And as I was, after when Shafika, when you reached out to me and you said, like we want you to speak at this time, I wondered what it is that would, what I would talk about. And I said, there are so many wonderful examples of the kind of creativity and ingenuity that individuals show, which is deeply rooted in their specific contexts, that we have 200 plus stories to pick from. And so what I did is I went actually through the archive and just plucked out a few to share with you, because they do span a wide range of possibilities and things that we can help us imagine sort of new futures for what digital learning and education can be. So here are a few that I want to share with all of you. So the first one I want to share was Baman Gimre is a teacher in Nepal and he just found out about these MOOCs that were being offered by universities across the world and just introduced his students to them. So this was an episode back in October of 2020 where we got a chance to meet with a whole bunch of high school students, and their stories were amazing. The kinds of things that they were learning, the kinds of things that they were doing, that they started by maybe taking a MOOC on language learning and then ended up wanting to learn more about astronomy and so on. And, they had the usual problems of electricity and internet outage and so on, but how they sort of persevered through that. And then we actually call those students back 4 years later. That's one of the advantages of running a show for that long. And it was amazing to see where each of these students, they are now in college, they are doing different things, and how they have grown and developed. And I think so. One lesson from here is just sort of featuring the voice of the learner, which is also, which is why I was very touched by having Hyun Park on previous, just a little few minutes ago. Another one, which again, this is Sume Lu and her sister. During the pandemic, they did not enjoy how sort of their school was doing things. They decided to take matters into their own hand, and they created this thing called the WeQuill app. You can go just Google it and find it. It's actually quite impressive what a bunch of young teenagers with enthusiasm could do. And I think that is something that is really worth acknowledging. We actually had one of the people, Justin Shell, who is an adult computer programmer who now works with these children in developing this app, which now actually I think is available in more than 50 different countries for homeschoolers and other people who want to learn. I mean, I really recommend these episodes for you to watch for the that it is just amazing what can be done if you decide to take matters in your own hand and try something out. I'm not saying all of your opportunities or possibilities will succeed, but it's just great. The next episode I want to talk about is this really interesting filmmaking course that a wildlife filmmaking course that filmmaker David McGowan, along with a former student, does in Rwanda, which is where this empowering the students there to create their own documentaries about the ecosystem, about wildlife, because it's under stress. We all know that, we understand that. And again, an example of how local communities can be empowered through these digital technologies to share their work with the world. The next one that I'll talk about is 4 episodes which were devoted to sort of opportunity groups in India doing work at the ground level, either around teachers' development and women's empowerment through Avishkar Foundation, Inkalab Foundation. These are all independent units. Aswath Learning Communities and Sacha Sapna, which work around teacher and women empowerment. Quest Alliance and Reap Benefit, who work on sort of workforce development, self-reliance. How do we do that translation between school and the world of work in authentic and powerful ways? Again, deeply rooted in their communities and so on. I could go on. I mean, honestly, I could talk about each of these episodes, but I want to give you a snapshot of all the different things that are possible in this space when people take the initiative. This was a very impressive episode called E Venturas with the guest Francisca Astudillo, Francesca Saez, and Sophia Lorraine. Sophia is actually a teacher in that work. And these are people who were actually interested in developing curriculum, but they go in and they realize that the social emotional aspect of learning, that the kinds of challenges, behavioral and social emotional skills that students need are in fact critical foundations for any genuine learning to happen, and decided to focus their attention on that. In their 5 years, they have identified, tackled key barriers, bringing evidence-based programs to Chile, and so on. So again, an example of people doing very sort of powerful, transformative things with an idea and following up on it. And there are story after story like this that I could share. The next is a set of 3 that we did, which looked at the idea of creativity and education. And again, in one from Australia, a couple from the US. And they sort of tackled both sort of ground level creativity, designing of spaces which allow for learners to create and make things, but also more theoretical ones, which like Peter Gray. If you haven't read his work, he's a very public scholar. You can look him up on Substack or on his website, writes very eloquently about how play has been taken out of children's life and how play is so critical to learning. And I think it is one of the things that the silver lining for learning, I think, has also done is given these broader theoretical ideas a sort of a space and a way to articulate so that they're accessible to a wider variety, a wider range of people. And now we've talked a lot about AI. That's the big thing. So a lot of our episodes in the recent past have looked at the role of AI in education, have looked at how artificial intelligence can both be something that can help educators, but also the kind of potential risks associated with it. How do we train the next generation of teachers? There's a whole bunch of episodes we have around that. In fact, I think 2 or 3 episodes ago, we focused on a very unique sort of a program looking at AI literacy. The ones that I have on screen here that you can see are 4 episodes. There are these national institutes that have been funded here in the United States, people doing work around for inclusive education using AI, for adult learning using AI, for engaged learning, and and for students team together. So sort of foundational research in this area, development of new tools. The National Institute, the adult learning that I mentioned here, they have developed this app which is being used across community colleges in a wide variety of courses as a sort of a partner and a cognitive partner rather than a replacement for the educator. So that these are people who are usually working full time while they're trying to go to school, so they're juggling a lot of things, and their schedule doesn't necessarily match the schedule of a college or a university. So how can we make some and sort of intelligent support available to them is really powerful. And the last examples that I would give, these are 3 that we did around Afghanistan, and these are 3 which I really look back. I mean, I when the episodes get done, usually, you finish with an episode, you go on with your life, and whatever, right? These 3 really stand out to me. I think if you ask me what are my favorite episodes, I think it was the episodes of Nepal, these kids from Nepal, their energy, their love for learning, the manner in which having access to education, digital education through MOOCs or whatever, transformed their way of looking at the world, even if they come from very impoverished and difficult circumstances. And what can we say about sort of women's education in Afghanistan right now? We understand the realities of it, but these are 3. One with this Asian university in Bangladesh. We have this project for Flowers for the Future. We got a chance to speak with young Afghanistani women who were backgrounds in engineering and so on, now taking up degrees in education in order to again transfer and pass on what they've learned to the next generation. Um, the next project of educational equity in world conflict zones. This is David Falconer in Canada connecting with Monash University, Michael Phillips, and Tara Manick, and creating a whole bunch of online courses. The first started with Ukraine, and then it expanded over to Afghanistan as well. Again, an example of how when you bring people together who are committed and passionate about what they do, it can make transformative changes. And the final one example is of a high school here in the United States, which has been working with students in Afghanistan to offer them online courses. So again, I could go on and on. Like I said, we have more than 225 hours of original, conversations with people. What I want to emphasize, though, it's that it has amplified the voices not found in traditional academic spaces. I'm an academic, I'm a scholar. I write journal articles which are hopefully read by 5 people and cited by 3, and then I'm very happy, right? And don't get me wrong, there is a pleasure, there is a value to that work. I'd be the last person to deny that. But very often we get stuck in our ivory towers. Has lasted as long as it has done. And honestly, even as I was listening to the speaker speak, I was taking notes, and you're going to be most probably getting a LinkedIn or an email from me asking you to be on a future episode if you would take the time to do so. I think the other thing it has done, it has allowed us to connect and also educators to connect globally who are creating change, very importantly in their local context. And as I said before, the episodes which focused on student voice have really been extremely meaningful to me personally, because it takes learning back. I think one of your guests talked about, when they asked for one word, they said 2, they said student and teacher. And I think that I think that what this has allowed us to do is bring that student and that educator voice into the space. I should add that this is a free pedagogical resource. This is available under Creative Commons license for anybody to use. We know there are people who are using it in their classes and so on. And so please feel free to share this. It is silverliningforlearning.org. It's completely free. You can get it as a podcast. You can go on YouTube and watch the videos, whatever shape or form works best for you. Um, a little bit about sort of lessons learned. I think the thing that has stuck out to us is in each of these conversations, there is a passion, there is a vision, there is a sense of persistence, because there will be challenges along the way. We have heard a lot about those, and we have heard some stories already in this session. But there is a deep commitment to making education better. It's a commitment that's driven by emphasizing student autonomy and self-determination, where the learner is centered genuinely. It also really emphasizes this idea of communities of learners and educators. Many of the speakers today have spoken about the broader systems that need to be brought together or need to be transformed for this to happen. But I think the other thing that stood out to us is that a lot of this work is sustained pockets of educational creativity and systematic innovation, right? That these are small, like very often, I often joke that policy, my brain is not, can't handle policy very well because it is at such a level of abstraction. I think what Silver Lining does and what I think these stories tell us is that there are these pockets of innovation that need to be nurtured and supported and developed because they are deeply grounded in local context. Finally, I want to sort of end with sort of how this work that we have done, that we continue to do. In fact, I mean, we 5 years and going, is sort of aligning with UNESCO's mission of innovation and diversity. That EdTech empowers diverse approaches beyond what's visible, sort of under the streetlight, so to speak, supporting UNESCO's vision of inclusive education, that these are contextual solutions, that change happens in pockets that grow organically within unique cultural context, not through simple transfer models. And I think that's really important to understand. So one of the things we talk about is translation versus transfer. Transfer is like, take it and you just plonk it somewhere else, but rather it's a movement, it's a translation which recognizes. So there's a lot that we can learn from these projects, but clearly you can't just take that idea and plonk it in some other place and say it's going to work the same way. You need that grassroots level sort of understanding of context and culture. Student agency, of course, I've already talked about that. The importance of centering local voices, our amplification through this show of innovators in low resource settings aligns with UNESCO's focus on educational equity. That's important. And then bridge building, which is connecting UNESCO's high-level policy work with grassroots innovation centers education systems that truly serve all learners. I am extremely privileged to be an educator. This is the greatest, honestly, job that I have. And there is no better job, right? What we do, education is always, always about the future. It is never looking to the here now. It is always pointing to the future. And I think that the stories that we heard today, and hopefully some of the examples that I shared with you in a few minutes, there's a lot, like I said, over 200 hours of material that you can, test and look at. And so, if there is anything that I would request, I would say you should be ready to join us, to help us. We are always looking, this is a completely volunteer activity. In fact, when we had almost 100 plus episodes, which were all on YouTube, we didn't have a podcast. And we realized that that was a growing need. A whole bunch of our viewers stepped up and said, we will help you do that. And they took all the MP3s and, did all that work for us for free, over a few months. So if you're interested, please reach out to us. If you know interesting projects that, Safika, I'll be reaching out to you for some contact information for people. We would love to have you as guests. I know we are tight on time, so I'm going to hop off, into if there are any questions from the audience and so on. And Safika, if you have any questions for me, but again, thank you so much for inviting me. But more importantly, thank you for the work that you do. This is the most important work that we have. We face a lot of challenges in the world today. Global climate change, new technologies, the rise of political strife and unrest. We are going to see a lot more migrant learners, immigrant learners who will not have access to schools. We will have to depend on digital technologies. So it behooves us to pay attention to that, to come up with better solutions for all of that. And I hope some of these stories help you think about that. So, Shafika, with that, I'm going to stop my share and leave it open to whatever you would like to talk about.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Mishra, for those excellent examples, really very powerful, about learning gains in these really challenging contexts. Thank you also for sharing and making accessible all these podcasts. Unfortunately, we will not have time for questions and discussion, but I think you've kindly shared your contact details and also opened the door for story sharing with you. And I think that we'll certainly take that up. Thank you very much. And also, highlighting that.
Shafika, one quick thing. I reply to every email I get. So that's a promise. So if you have any questions that I didn't address in this 20 minutes that I had, or if you have anything else that you think I could help with, drop me an email. It's Punya, Punya, at ASU, that's Arizona State University.edu. That's it.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Thank you. And I can vouch for you always answering your emails. So thank you very much for sharing. And unfortunately, we're going to have to draw this very rich, very thought-provoking 2-hour and a bit session to a close. We've gained very valuable insights from our speakers and have been very inspired by your thoughtful engagement and the time that everyone has really taken to reflect deeply on the issues. I did want to just echo what 2 of the ministers said about it is important, certainly as UNESCO, we work with policy leaders, so we need to build strong policy leadership that prioritize digital equity and local solutions. That came out very strongly also in the points raised by Prof. Punya, as well as teacher empowerment as a cornerstone of effective digital learning. The co-designing of technology focused on cultivating teacher and student agency, working with families, and designs that are purposeful and inclusive and responsive to local needs in particular. And then finally, the issue around building partnerships that drive meaningful digital learning experiences, particularly local partnerships, local entrepreneurs, and also local community organizations. So thank you very much for that. We'd like to thank everyone for their engagement today and look forward to continuing this important discussion. Please be reminded that you are all warmly invited to join us at the 2025 Digital Learning Week that will take place on the 2nd to the 5th of September in Paris. It has been a singular honor to serve you as your moderator. I am reminded of a saying in Bambara from Mali, that when you cannot lift a stone with one finger, you need to use the whole hand. And I think this African wisdom speaks very directly to our work in education. We can only move forward by working together, embracing diverse ways of knowing, and standing firm in our commitment to address deepening inequalities and vulnerabilities. We wish you all the best, good luck, for all the excellent work that you're doing. And as we leave today's discussion, let's carry forward the spirit of collaboration and action. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir. Good afternoon.